Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your Week 4 Monday Morning Breakfast Bite. This week we start talking about contracts, and with contracts we're going to be looking at the basic understanding of contracts this week. And so you're going to be introduced to contracts, you're going to be introduced to the agreement, which consists of the offer and the acceptance, and the terms of the agreement, what those are, and you're going to be introduced to consideration. Now, the agreement, the contract, is made up of the meeting of the minds, which is the agreement between the parties. And in order to get to that point, you first have to have an offer, and then you have to have an acceptance. So there are 4 primary elements of a contract. There's agreement, consideration, capacity, and legality. And then the 5th would be the form of the contract, because some contracts, as you'll learn in further modules, have to be in writing in order to be enforceable. So, but for now we're going to focus this week on agreement and consideration. So when we talk about that agreement, we're talking about that meeting of the minds. There are several types of contracts, so you want to focus on the different types: bilateral contract and a unilateral contract. Now when we talk about valid contract versus an unenforceable contract, we mean that all of the elements of the requirements of a contract have been met, and you can tell that they are met from just looking at the contract. You have the terms specified, you have the specifics of what has to be done as far as the consideration, and both parties have signed the contract, or all parties have signed the contract. So it looks like it's a valid and enforceable contract. An unenforceable contract means that there are missing terms. Maybe the consideration isn't properly stated, perhaps the signatures or one of the signatures may be missing. That means the contract is unenforceable. A voidable contract is a contract that looks like, from the surface of it, and if you're looking at the contract, it looks like it's a valid and enforceable contract, but then you find out that the person that signed the contract didn't have the capacity to enter into the contract because they weren't of legal age, and therefore the contract is voidable. So that's what we're looking at when we look at the language of the contracts, and you're looking at verbiage of contracts and the types of contracts. A bilateral contract is a contract where you have what we call quid pro quo, which is an exchange of consideration, this for that. A unilateral contract, think of rewards. A unilateral contract is something that cannot be completed, it cannot be completed without an act. So if, for example, you say that I will give you $100 if you find my missing dog, well, until the person finds that missing dog, there's no obligation to give anyone that $100, and you don't know who the receiver is going to be of that $100 until the act is actually completed. So when we talk about unilateral contract, those unilateral contracts, those are very few and far between. An illusory contract, you're going to want to pay attention to that. Promissory estoppel, very important term. Quasi-contracts, also very important terms. Quid pro quo, understand that when we talk about consideration, we're talking about quid pro quo, this for that. Each party is giving something that they feel is of value to the other party. So pay attention to those terms as you're going through the material this week. Pay attention, make sure you understand when an offer is made, how you may accept the offer, because if you change the terms of the offer, you become the counter offerer. You're no longer the offeree, the person who's looking to accept the original offer, because now you've made a counter offer and the other person is in the place of accepting or rejecting that counter offer. So just be aware of those things. This week for homework, you have your Module 4 discussion. You have your case analysis with regard to the Gonzalez case. You're actually only going to identify the law, which is just one little section where you just state the names or titles of the laws that were involved in the case. You have quiz 4, and then you have a Module 4 Cengage video quiz if that's been assigned to you by your instructor. If you have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to contact your instructor who I'm sure would be more than happy to answer those questions. Have a great week.